as both Arnulf and Kago before me have mentioned, digitalization is clearly one of the powerful secular transformative forces that's reshaping society and the economy. And just in case it wasn't already very obvious, digitalization is fundamentally about data, collecting, exchanging, storing, analyzing data very cheaply, very quickly, very connectively, and with great analytical force. And this creates both major opportunities, which Kago and Arnulf mentioned, but also major risks for societies, for the economy, and for the planet. And I think to date, if you think about how public policy has engaged with digitalization, you might think of issues of taxation, you might think about issues of monopolistic market power, and you might think about issues of consumer protection and data surveillance. But you probably won't think about issues of energy demand and climate and carbon emissions. And this is because these two policy agendas, I think so far, have been rather disconnected. So in the LED scenario, we reconnect them. We see digitalization as a powerful transformative force for good. And here on the left are 7, if you like, virtues of digitalization. Digital technologies can substitute for physical activity, exactly like we're all doing now through teleworking. Digital services can provide access to useful services for daily life rather than the need to own goods, what Arnulf was just discussing with respect to this convergence onto general purpose devices like smartphones. Digital technologies and services allow us to exchange and reuse and share goods, and so reduce waste and promote circular economy platforms. Digital services allow us to control and better manage our use of energy and resources, such as the various smart technologies for use in the home. Digital services allow us to coordinate service provision, for example, in the kinds of shared mobility scenarios that both Kago and Arnulf again were discussing. Digital technologies play a crucial role in integrating low carbon technologies onto networks and grids. For example, in the high intermittent renewable penetration, digital technologies are critical for load management and balancing. And digital technologies help us track carbon emissions through supply chains to allow both informed consumer choices as well as differentiating policies to reward the good and penalize the bad. However, there are also 7 deadly sins, if you like, or 7 major risks with respect to digitalization. Again, Kago's mentioned the idea that we could see rebounds towards ever greater levels of consumption as the efficiency gains from digitalization result in scale effects. We could also intensify new innovative ways of using energy. And the one that makes the headlines is Bitcoin mining, but there are many others. Digitalization also risks creating distrust through inappropriate forms of data surveillance, which can lead to rather mundane levels of consumer resistance to things like smart meters. Digitalization can also divide society into digital haves and digital have-nots. And we saw that the COVID impacts were differentiated strongly between those with and without good digital access. And digitalization, again, as makes the news, can also result in the polarization of opinion, the fostering of extremism, which in turn can undermine democratic governance. Digitalization and platforms can also manipulate preferences for commercial ends. And finally, digitalization and the information and communication technology industry generally has resource requirements for particularly rare earth and other minerals that are often extracted and mined in problematic conditions. So digitalization is both a potential force for good and a potential force for ill. And in the LED scenario, we use the digitalization of daily life as one of the major drivers of lower energy demand from 2020 to 2050. So some of the examples, again, just to recap these, they've already been mentioned. Digitalization plays a critical enabling or driving role in the integration of intermittent renewables. in the integration of a massive electric vehicle fleet through smart charging, bi-directional charging. And at the end use level, digitalization plays a critical role, offering, for example, shared mobility, better management of energy in buildings for heating and cooling, and then the sorts of substitution activities which we're engaged in at the moment, where we move into the digital realm and out of the physical realm. So in LED, we explore this in the direction of lowering energy demand, but it's of course important recognizing the risks that there are. The impacts of digitalization systemically are very uncertain. And this graph sort of sketches out, you can see the red, the green and the blue future projections for global greenhouse gas emissions. And on the right, you can see 3 criteria by which we might evaluate future digital pathways, not just planetary stability through reduced energy and reduced emissions, but also equity and inclusion, which my colleague Shanali is going to talk about in a little bit later, but also democracy and political agency. And you can see that the green and the blue scenario both see digitalization having a positive force in terms of greenhouse gas emissions and energy demand. But in the blue scenario, this is at the cost of human agency and inclusiveness. And these are also issues which it's very important to avoid. So thank you much for your attention, and I look forward to further discussions about how we achieve that positive digital future later on.